Hey everyone, and welcome to my review for HBO's House of the Dragon Episode 6, The Princess and the Queen. So after 10 in-world years, we're back, and I think this was another very solid episode, as well as a great introduction to many new characters and actors. First off, right away, I want to recognize the incredible job done by pretty much all the new actors, especially the two playing adult Rhaenyra and Alicent. Both did an amazing job and fit right in with the rest of the cast, especially Olivia Cooke as Alicent, who most stood out to me, which is fitting since Emily Carey, who played the character first, routinely put on incredible performances. This wasn't my favorite episode of the season, but considering everything they had to accomplish, I was very much satisfied with what we got. So before getting into the top 5 moments, the first honorable mention goes to pretty much every scene with Harwin Strong. What an absolutely fantastic character, who was so much more likable and in his own way honorable than I expected. Unfortunately, we don't get to know much about him from the books, and while we didn't get much in the show either, the bits they threw in during earlier episodes, coupled with what we got in this one, made me love the Strongs even more than I already did. This made it all the more satisfying when he beat Criston Cole into the ground. I also enjoyed watching his discussion with his father, another of my favorite characters, and while I hate that they both had to die, given the time constraints, I think they did everything possible to make both very compelling characters. I also really liked the quick moment we got with Alicent's daughter Helena, as at first I wasn't paying close attention to what she was saying, though I did catch her mention one eye, which then made me go back and rewatch the scene, which seems to be hinting at her being a dreamer, which is not mentioned in the books but would be a very cool character trait for her. Another honorable mention goes to Daemon and Laena riding their dragons together, the excellent dinner scene in Pentos where they spoke about Aegon and the War of the Triarchy, as well as young Jace questioning his mother about Harwin being his real father. Now, moving on to what I felt was the 5th best moment of the episode, I chose the Dragonpit training scene between Jace and Vermax. I loved everything about this, from the badass trainer who spoke Valyrian to our first look at Vermax and a glimpse into the relationship between the boys. I have to say I was surprised and happy to see Aegon getting along with his half-brothers, though it unfortunately came at the expense of young Aemond, whose serious, sullen nature was in stark contrast to the others. But I like that they also gave him a scene showing his incredible bravery, especially concerning dragons, as it's a nice preview of things to come. For the 4th best moment of the night, I chose the small council meeting where Rhaenyra finally displayed what I felt was an appropriate level of competence and seriousness concerning affairs of the realm. This was very satisfying to watch. However, I still feel it took far too long for her to start behaving like a reasonably intelligent political figure. This is the Rhaenyra I expected from the books, competent, bold, filled with potential, but far from perfect. I also greatly sympathized with the pain she must have felt suggesting Jacaerys marry Helena. This was a very practical and sensible solution, which had the added effect of making Alicent look unreasonable for refusing, even if her reasons are somewhat understandable. Really enjoyed this scene. Moving on to the 3rd best moment of the night, I went with good old Lionel Strong attempting to resign his position. As always, Lionel Strong stood out for being a good, honorable noble, genuinely trying to do right by his son and king, seemingly without any ulterior motive beyond being a good man. Seeing him unable to speak the truth while also trying to make it clear he was compromised was a great thing to witness. Lionel was really starting to remind me of Eddard Stark in a lot of ways, though I think Lionel is more flexible and therefore successful in politics, focusing on his personal honor rather than trying to impose his standards upon others. I also really liked seeing Viserys refuse his resignation, and the look of crazed anticipation from Alicent, like a shark sensing blood in the water. It was all excellent. For the number 2 spot, I chose Alicent walking in on Aegon and forcing him to think about politics and his future as king. This scene stood out primarily because of the performances by both actors. Alicent, as I already mentioned, was a standout, but it was this scene where I really got to see Alicent from the books come alive, as she behaved exactly like what I might have expected, with a wild, aggressive hostility that sways from cunning to foolish at a moment's notice, thoughtlessly bulldozing her way towards civil war, letting her anger and bitterness potentially bring about one of the worst possible outcomes that could reasonably be expected, instead of taking the many alternative routes presented to her, or making any attempt to analyze the situation rationally and understand the horrific, widespread, and personal consequences that might arise from the war she seeks. Aegon also did an excellent job, not only displaying the spoiled, frivolous boy I expected from the books, but also showing layers to his character, making him more than a one-dimensional villain, while still remaining true to his many unflattering character traits. I mentioned earlier that I liked seeing Aegon get along with his half-brothers, but I also liked seeing the worry and fear in his eyes while he spoke to his mother, suggesting he was taking her words to heart. Now, finally, for the best moment of the night, I once again returned to the Strong family, but this time to the traitorous snake that slithered his way into Alicent's confidence, putting him in the perfect position to enter the Game of Thrones as a top-level player, seeking either victory or death with no room in between. My god, was this unexpected. In the books, there's a suggestion that maybe it was Larys who killed his family, but to be honest, I never really thought that was true. I always assumed it was Daemon Targaryen. And given what they showed us in the wedding banquet, how Larys and his brothers seemed to be getting along perfectly well, I was under the impression they were probably close, and that while Larys was loyal to the Greens, he was working an angle for the sake of his family as well as himself. Maybe this was foolish to think, given all the terrible things he does in the books, but that was genuinely my impression from the little we saw of him in the show up to this point. So when Larys gave his creepy little speech explaining what he did, intercut with the fire at Harrenhal and the death of two of my favorite characters, I was devastated and furious with this monstrous psychotic traitor. But as much as I hate him, these scenes were done so well, I can't wait to learn more of him and learn what fresh horrors he's committed. I also really enjoyed the subtle threats he lobbied at Alicent, making it clear he's not to be messed with, and he will serve her loyally only so long as she rewards him in equal measure. Alicent now has no choice but to accept him as a powerful friend, or else turn him into a devastating enemy. With this one scene, Larys elevated his status as a political schemer to stand right alongside other all-time greats like Varys and Littlefinger. I also loved seeing Alicent's reaction and nearly laughed seeing the ridiculous look of shock on her face as she was finally confronted with the consequences she can expect if she continues to go down the path towards war. This especially stood out because of the conversation she had earlier with Kristen, where she arrogantly and naively spoke about being on the side of honor and decency, but by the end of the episode, reality finally slapped her in the face, and it became clear any moral high ground she held disappeared long ago, as she's clearly no better than Rhaenyra, just on a different team. So those were my top 5 moments of the night, and as I said, this was a solid episode I very much enjoyed. If there is one criticism I have, seemingly with every episode, but it really stood out in this one, it's that things are moving far faster than I would like. Just as an example, as much as I enjoyed the Larys Strong reveal, I think it could have been even better if we had more time with the Strongs, learning more about them and perhaps some possible cracks in their relationship. I feel the same way about Rhaenyra's relationship with Cole and Harwin, as they seemed very rushed. However, that being said, I completely understand why they have to keep things moving. If you've watched my 35-minute Dance of the Dragons video, you'll know that everything they've covered in the show so far takes up roughly the first 5 minutes of that video, meaning there's a lot of ground to cover and they basically have no choice but to go at this pace. It's unfortunate in my opinion, but given the realities of the show's production, I think they're doing the best job possible. Now, for my favorite kill of the episode, I went with Laena Velaryon ordering Vhagar to burn her alive. Although she didn't have many scenes before this episode, Laena was one of the secondary characters I most liked and looked forward to learning about, and I think she really excelled in every scene she had despite the changing actresses. In the books, Laena died in childbirth, and some stories say she tried to make it to Vhagar to fly one last time, but died before making it. Ultimately, I think they made the right choice giving her a more dramatic ending, and like they did with Harwin, I think they successfully made Laena a likable, compelling character despite time limitations. Moving on to the best line of the night, I went with the exchange between Larys Strong and Alicent when he says, "You've heard the stories of Harrenhal, your grace. It's built in hubris by Harren the Black as a monument to his own greatness, blood mixed into the mortar. It is said to be a cursed place, that it passes judgment on all who pass beneath its gates." Alicent then interrupts and says, You pass judgment." To which Larys replied, "The queen makes a wish. What servant of the realm would not strive to fulfill it?" So that's my review for House of the Dragon Episode 6, The Princess and the Queen. Another great episode from a great show. So overall, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. And as is the mark of a good show, I'm very much looking forward to the next episode. But what did you guys think of this one? What do you think of the time jump and all the new actors? Let me know in the comments below, and like always, be sure to check out the links to some of my other recent videos, like the spoiler-free Prelude to the House of the Dragon video, the spoiler-filled Dance of the Dragons video, my World of Thrones geography video, and a beginner's guide to the entire history of A Song of Ice and Fire. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and check out the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.